Hello and welcome to Royale Without Cheese, our bi-weekly podcast in which we discuss both the classic and the unknown of art and popular cinema from the then and now. We are your hosts, me, Tomás Ferreira, and Leonardo Miranda.
Hello.
Today we talk about The Exorcist, but before any ado, don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, or simply give us a like. The Exorcist is a 1973 American horror film directed by William Friedkin from a screenplay by William Peter Blatty, based on his 1971 novel of the same name. The film stars Ellen Burstyn, Max von Sydow, Jason Miller, and Linda Blair, and follows the demonic possession of a young girl and her mother's attempt to rescue her through an exorcism. At the time, reviews were mixed. Audiences famously suffered shocks on their way out of the theaters, and several cities tried to ban it. Fast forward to 2023, the movie celebrates 50 years, but does it still hold up? Royale Without Cheese has come to confess.
It's just a film,
Yeah.
people.
We
No
have
need to
come
faint.
to confess. No need to faint, no need to vomit, no need to have a heart attack. But to the movie's credit, it is very, very good. And well, what is the hidden secret, Leo? What is the hidden secret to The Exorcist?
The Exorcist, I would say,
Mhm.
Friedkin style, the sort of realistic approach, or he calls it almost a documentary-like type of filmmaking. It's very on the ground, very objective. There's not a lot of, especially in the quieter scenes, there's not a lot of Dutch angle. There's no, as far as I noticed, there's no like Dutch angles. There's no hyper stylization of the image in the way that we think when it comes to a lot of horror films. It mainly comes from the light, and it mainly comes from in the more heightened scenes with Reagan. Um,
Reagan.
yeah, Reagan, Ronald Reagan.
I imagine Ronald Reagan appear from the bed. Mama,
But it mainly comes from being confronted very directly with this supernatural event that is treated as almost as fact by the end, especially in how you see her eyes glow, you see her vomit, you see the scars in her body, you see her voice change. I think that's where a lot of the power of the film comes, is how it treats this and films this as though it's just matter of fact. I think that's what a lot of people at the time reacted to
Exactly.
so violently.
Exactly. Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. One of the points that I wrote about this film was particularly its documentary approach, especially at the opening sequence, which one of the most amazing opening sequences I've ever seen. For you see, I've already adopted my Friedkin approach. Will one of the best sequences that I've ever seen. He asks this kind of thing with his hands when he's explaining. But yeah, like one of the best opening sequences to a horror film that I've ever seen. And to me, that hidden secret, that hidden quality about The Exorcist, and why, in my opinion, watching the film now being my second time, in the year that it's celebrating 50 years, by the way, um, I've noticed it. I noticed so much more in the film, and I think that yes, it is that balance between the supernatural and the realism. There is a groundedness throughout the film. It just screams the movie's intention in wanting to invite the audience rather to an atmosphere, rather than leading the audience, rather than trying to tell the audience exactly what to see, how to feel, because it's a very languid pace, and in such a way it surprises you. When I was watching the film for the very first time, I was expecting to jump right into the exorcism, you see, right into the scene. And somehow my mind had this perspective, this famous film that I knew for years. My mind was expecting that the film would be all of it, the exorcism, inside a little girl's room, because that's all the images that you see. The famous images are her with the scarred face, zombie-like look to her. So somehow you expect the movie to be all gore and fright, but it isn't. He keeps that away for the later half of the films, particularly the end, climatic ending. And for the most part, it is this balancing act between two narrative strands. Reagan's mother, Chris, trying to save her daughter, consulting the doctors, even going on campus to later on find Father Damien, who has some expertise or she might sympathize with, because he seems a bit skeptical, but at the same time he's a priest, he may have the skills to do this, to save my daughter. And then the strand of Father Damien himself, And I think that it is very interesting how, in this languid pace, what does the film actually want? What does the film actually intend from really accompanying the lives of these two people for so long until the supernatural elements start kicking in? What does it pretend? Kind of in the first viewing of the film, this doesn't hit you very much, but on the second watch, first off, there's a great opening scene in North Iraq with Father Marin finding the totem of the devil Pazuzu, which is a devil from ancient Mesopotamian times. He's like he represents as the southern western wind, and he can be a force for destructive means or kind of safekeeping. And it is interesting, that clash between old civilization and the new modern times, and that's the key for the fear in the film, the power of the eeriness in the film, because you're seeing all this human power, the picorettes, the hammers bursting and unraveling the earth to discover these statues with evil power. It seems like you're trying to find something that you shouldn't find in the first place, and then you kind of fade out from this ancient, hot, devilish land to the modern a modern city, and you feel that that same spirit is creeping in, which is very much worked or explored through Friedkin through the means of sound, of the picorettes and the pendulum of the clock. And so you are introduced to these two strands of narrative, Father Damien and Chris, mother to Reagan. And I think it's interesting how the supernatural creeps into the story and how the mother tries to intervene with that. The supernatural, what happens to Reagan, is clearly, to me, him exploring the question of maturity, because essentially how Reagan and her mother are presented in the first part of the story, in the first act, are these mother and daughter who have a very strong bond, right? Very strong bond, and they do things who are kind of far into the forgotten land of prepubescent land, where the mother and daughter run around the house, they get physical together, there's always kisses, there's these dialogues, they are all like cutesy pie, lovable innocence. You know what I'm going to do tomorrow? What? I'm going to take you to the movies. We're going to have a picnic. Oh, I love you, Rags. I love you, mother. There's this cutesy pie quality that lives in an idyllic land of parent and child kind of bond or relationship that William Friedkin is very aware about and wants to kind of challenge through the supernatural happening, which is actually adolescence, with mood swings and body changes, sexual awakening, but of course, being a supernatural phenomena to a heightened level, right? To over the top level, and of course, magical level, being a demon inside her. But it's very much what happens, because she turns into this foul-mouthed, perverted version of herself, like a very angry, angsty adolescent who can't stop from herself. And it's interesting how visually that is also portrayed, because the mother tries to make Reagan go to the doctor, and the first trip to the doctor is very contained. He films the film in large tones, in a very stark lighting, contained colors of blues and browns, kind of autumn to winter, and mainly 2 shots, 3 shots, fixed shots that, if inside the family home, they are wide shots mainly, so they reveal a lot of the kind of magnitude of the house. So you might be close to 3 characters, but you're always feeling kind of the size, the dimension of the place. You can feel that any breath of wind can enter through any division, and that's scary to a degree, because the wind has a great presence in this film. In fact, the very demon that possesses it represents kind of an evil wind. And that's one of the first shots you see of being inside this house, when you see Regan's mother kind of looking for the sound in the attic. She goes to her daughter's bedroom, and the window is open, the very window that delivers the final blow to the hero priest Damien in the end. So that's where the evil comes in, the outsider kind of agent that takes in possession of Reagan. But when she's in the first trip at the doctor, those shots are very similar, fixed 2 shots, kind of documentary, as you would phrase it. You have a doctor, you have the patient, all this machinery around her, but then a point of view of a nurse in handheld capacity, following Reagan as she's humming around, looking at the ceiling lost. And there's a freedom at that moment. You feel there's a breath that comes in, and the tone change, it shifts. So she's starting to act differently, and then comes a slurring, etc. This was very interesting to me, very gripping to me, how he built this tone over the film, and he wasn't afraid to not go immediately to the gory parts or the frightening parts. All the while, what is Father Damien? Why are we following him? It's because Father Damien, we are following his routines as much as we are following the routines at first of this mother and daughter, right? So there is a domestic quality to the film. We are invited to the American family home, and evil is invited there. That's what's creepy about it, is that this evil from an ancient time, very deep, comes into the lives, into our daily lives, of that are routine, normal, plain as anything can be, and then suddenly something unexpected happens. Death is also that something that is very unexpected. And I think the Damien narrative arc is the thing that keeps the supernatural arc of Reagan. Although everything in it can be traced back to, every symbolism in it can be traced back to the question of maturity and adolescence, Damien's narrative is far more just realistic. He's just a guy dealing with his own problems of faith and doubting himself. He's a psychiatrist as well. He kind of deals with his patients' despair and tries to find an answer to everything, but he can't. So that feeds into his despair. Can I help? Is there a God? I think one of the most beautiful kind of transitions there is in the film is that we find him after one of the trips to the doctor, I think, of Reagan. We find him at the pub, kind of picking these drinks up, going to his father friend, giving the drinks. Like, why is a priest in a bar? It's strange. It sets him up always in this weird location on surrounding environment. He's not your normal priest. You rarely see him giving mass, and when he gives mass, he always seems to have a worryful expression in his face. And he also has his own ailing mother. You see him, you go into his house, inside his home. His ailing mother is starting to decaying. She then becomes forgetful. She's evidently mentally going away. So when suddenly she goes to this insane asylum, the POV shots of him looking to the mental patients in the asylum are something that is so gripping, because you see these people kind of talking to nothing, contacting with nothing, just in their own heads. It really marries the supernatural in the film with the psychosis, with the psyche of human beings. The realm of the real with the realm of the fantasy coming together, which is which. And also there's a third theme. There's also another thing here, because right after this thing of his mother being taken away from him to this insane asylum, a scene where we see that he's not capable for money reasons of supporting her, even if he wanted to, and then he feels guilty about it. What we find out is that there's this question of social class in the film as well. When we have in the following scene this huge lavish party that is given by this actress, which is Reagan's mother, it really shows kind of a different lifestyle. And so and it's a very intentional thing from Friedkin, because he has more than one scene where he wants to underline the fact that this is a rich home. Reagan's home, Chris's home, her mother, is a rich home. She's an actress. She shows a scene where she's doing a movie at the college where he works at, Father Damien. She's there playing a scene. Then you have the party at the house. She can come in this whole slew of 18 doctors to try and help her daughter, far more than the average American can do, who is afraid of going to the hospital. And so it's really a commentary on, while this guy who really wants to help his mother can't, what happens with this mother who can do anything? Then comes the question of, now Friedkin plays at the panic that the audience can have of, what if you had all the money in the world? Well, of course, you could rid anybody of any disease, of course, but in this case, there's a sort of despair to that question, and the answer, no, you can't. Because you can't rid yourself from the devil, at least, in this context of the demon, in this scenario, right? So that is frightful. What happens when medicine and science cannot help you? So that's a big thing into the film as well. But enough of my yapping. What do you think of all this? We kind of discussed, the groundedness in the film, the the visual style, but also this question of social class. So did you see anything of this as well?
Let me start with the social class. I didn't feel so much the class consciousness of it all. I didn't feel, it's there, but I didn't feel it as much as a point as maybe you did. What spoke to me more was he's taking Like, for example, the scene of the film that she's filming, it's her talking to a bunch of student protesters, and the whole spiel she gives about, no, change comes from within the system and all that. I think he's taking those anxieties that a lot of people, especially from the more establishment type of thing, that I think Friedkin sort of puts himself against in a lot of a lot of new Hollywood directors were hippies, let's say, not hippies necessarily, but were of those. They had that sort of consciousness, that
Attitude, consciousness.
anti-war. Yeah, exactly. So I think the film is sort of taking some of those anxieties regarding sexual liberation or whatever, and applying that to anxieties that people have towards women, especially younger women, developing into their own beings. And I think that's essentially what Regan serves as this symbol of this fear that people have of the
Womanhood.
of womanhood. Yeah, exactly.
When you put it
And
plainly.
like it's literally the devil
Yeah, yeah.
turning her into this foul-mouthed, vulgar being. And she saved. I mean, this now is not even just my reading. This is a reading that's probably the most popular, at least the most debated reading of the film, which is she's saved by essentially like the patriarchy, by these patriarchal figures, the priest, these two men who slap the shit out of her until she is no longer the devil.
Yeah.
And there's even the sacrifice of the man for the greater good of the woman. Of
Yeah.
course, like, these are readings a bit more, they're not necessarily the be all and all of the film, but it's
Yeah.
fun to think about.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I think I saw it more from that lens. But also, it's being the first time I was watching the film, I was very impressed with the structure and the rhythm. The film is there's like a tone of as you said languid. It's like there's a slow pace to it all, and then a lot of these moments are abruptly interrupted by moments of intensity and even vulgarity. It's sort of a good counterpoint between it all, and sort of it's a rhythm that became maybe a little very established in the horror genre. This, you have the quiet moments, and then they're interrupted by great violence. But I think here it's very well done. It's super
Yeah,
hypnotizing.
Because it hasn't crystallized yet. I think it hasn't become a formulaic thing where
Yeah, and it's not a formula per
nowadays.
se. It's just
Yeah,
he's exploring
exactly,
the characters and he's showing you
exactly.
their development. It's different than from other horror films where it's like in the quiet scenes nothing is done. It's just nothing. It's just people looking around. Whoa, we're having fun, man. Nothing can go
Yeah,
wrong.
it's people being people. It's allowing people
Yeah.
being people. Let's say so. Then when the horror comes, it really gets at you because, like said, the visual throughout most of the film is that stark lighting, those fixed shots, a handheld shot here and there in the more intense moments, especially at the doctors. But I think there's a lot of an eeriness that comes from the realism of the scenes, things that you can find in our real world. No bullshit. I mean, for example, the very trips to the doctor, which escalate further and further into this clinical discussions of what she might have, really play into the panic of the fear of not being able to save a dear one's life and what he or she may have, being a disease that is unknown or incurable. And not just that, is also the fact that what if you are more afraid of the cure than of the disease as well, because he really taps into kind of that fear of the hospital machinery
Yeah.
that he puts around Reagan, because the shots become, he plays a lot with long lenses and these tight shots around, which are more often than not, high angle shots of her in that hospital bed with the machinery around, and then this very famous shot of the needle prick into her neck, squirting blood, that got, very strong reactions from the audience at the time, because it's very real. This could happen to you. This is not unfamiliar to me. And then there's a big play with the sound as well of the machinery going, that rhythmic thumping, which is rhymes visually and orally with what we heard in the beginning at Max von Sydow, our X site excavation. And so, yeah, it really taps into that fear, and it's just
I
that
think
nothing else is happening.
Yeah, the scene in the doctor that you're mentioning. Yeah, it's one of the scenes that a lot of people mention as being like terrifying because the way it's framed and because it's so scientifically like accurate, I assume. I think it's a very important scene to make the rest of the film feel even more.
The despair.
Yeah, the despair. It's like it's a very important scene in the sense that it shows you what would be the logical and the scientific solution, which is to put her through these tests. And you see how even that is extremely painful. So you're like, okay, maybe an exorcism makes more sense, you know? Maybe it's what's
Yeah.
warranted here. And also because even
And the
though
way they
there's an
explain the
ambiguity,
exorcism, you
yeah,
see, like the doctors say, the way the doctors frame it is like, have you thought of exorcism? And they have tried everything, and it's the last
yeah,
thing they suggest. And even then, they say they think it works, but it functions as a shock treatment. Like
exactly.
it's everything is framed from that perspective.
Yeah,
So it makes even more. Oh, okay, I understand why they are suggesting this
yeah,
makes sense.
yeah.
It doesn't come as unrealistic.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
what I
no, it
mean.
makes exactly. But the thing is, at least for me, watching the film, and maybe it's because the film is so popular already. We already know what's the deal, like by the end, because these images are all so popular.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but to me, from the beginning, it's sort of pretty unambiguous that it's the devil. Like it's not gonna be cured by medicine. It's the devil. You
Yeah.
need an exorcism here. I think the intro, as you mentioned with Max, contributes a great deal to making that feeling immediate of this is
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
something greater than science, let's say. But even like the sounds she hears in the attic, the way like the flame when she's with the candle, the way it lights up. I think there's moments where I think there's a moment where you see like her eyes, like Reagan's eyes, um, turn white, and it's before they even like get to the point of the exorcism. So you're like, okay, this is clearly something beyond like the natural. But again, but I do also see like he leaves enough ambiguity to make it you always doubt yourself a little bit. Like I felt that a little bit. That from the get go, it's a little more showing like these science people just completely out of their element, completely
Mm-hmm.
out
Mm-hmm.
of they don't have the answers, and also cutting back to Father Karas Damien, to me also communicates that, because it's like here's a man, dealing with his lack of faith, and here's a young girl being possessed by a demon. Like it's almost like a sadistic way to confirm your belief. Is yeah, God exists because here's the devil. Here's a woman possessed by the devil, and so I felt like
Mm-hmm.
those two strands also are always communicating with each other, and you sort of feel that for Damien. It's like, no, man, you can have your beliefs. You can believe God again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But again, but
Yeah,
it's
there's
a
very
bleak film in
much.
that sense as well.
Yeah, there's very much that sense of redemption. His arc is an arc of redemption, I think, because you see him so oftenly consumed by alcohol and drinking, and the lack of money. So and there's something to his past that seems unrevealed, some hurt, some trauma. I don't know what, but he seems he's carrying something that the film doesn't quite reveal or explore. I don't think it needs to. I'm not saying that,
Hmm.
but it makes interesting that there's almost a story for a spin-off, which I don't need. Okay, I don't have any ideas, anybody out there.
Yeah, there's a bunch
But
of sequels.
yeah, exactly. Except of him. But he's an interesting character because of that mystery to him. I mean, what
Hmm.
happened to him in his life? How did he end up here? I feel like he has traveled the world or the US to come to this place, to come to this church, and there's the guy, he carries a gravitas behind his eyes. And so you really want some kind of redemption for him. You really want that thing of, yes, you can believe again, kind of attitude, because of here's a mission for you. Yeah, so there's that, how should I put it, that reward feeling at the end of, even when he dies accomplishing something, or salvaging his soul, within the language of the film
Hmm.
and Christianhood. What about the,
Yeah.
the opening? Do you want to comment on it? Because I think the opening is like, it could be a short film on its own, very much
I mean, the
so.
opening,
It's a
I
beautiful
found
opening.
it very strange
Mm-hmm.
because I had no idea it started that way. And even like I assume, because I first started watching the director's cut, I didn't. I mean, I didn't intentionally though. I downloaded a version
Yeah.
legally, and I started watching it, and I was this is the director's version. Maybe that's why it starts this way with this strange scene that seems like more a prelude. So then I started watching the normal version. I was like, okay, no, it starts the same way.
Yeah,
Clearly,
yeah.
it's intentional because
I
it
also had the same
genuinely
feeling.
feels out of place when you first
True,
encounter the
true.
film
When I
because
first watched, was the same feeling.
indeed, it's sunlight. It's like there's a lot of light immediately. So
Yeah,
it's not even visually speaking, it seems like a different film, but it
yeah,
makes sense. It's actually, it's very important. And again, and Friedkin said that a lot of people, I think even Blatty himself, the writer, was like, maybe it's not a necessary scene. Maybe we can cut it off and get straight to the action, quote unquote. But he's like, but it's Friedkin says it's very important in establishing not only the mythology behind the film, and that is not super explained, but it's important to suggest,
yeah,
and also the moods, like the uncertain mood of the film. And I think
yeah,
he's right in how in different places in the world can be haunted by the same devil, let's say.
yeah. I mean, that's an amazing idea. That's a very powerful idea, and he, masterfully expresses it. This is an example, this opening scene, of great directing, and great thinking behind how he wants the language of the film to function in an overall. And the thing is, like you said, on the other side of the world, there lives the same devil rising up again, And the opening of this sequence is like this. It's like this Arab chanting, Allah, over the film's title, and it's so the word is displacement. It's I don't want I won't say alien like in a xenophobic way. That's not what I mean. I say alien in the sense that you're not expecting. Alien in the sense that you look at the other and say, what is this
Yeah,
sound I'm
exactly.
hearing? You're not waiting for even because it's a very Catholic
Yeah, true.
kind of culture mythology going on in here. The exorcism, you expect Catholic priests, and then suddenly the Arab chanting, Muslim religion. So okay, and you hear this beautiful score just before that chant opens in, and when it hits, it's like this spiritual call to the heavenly, the spiritual other side, the afterlife, and you open with this sun in black and white. So the fight between good and evil kind of paints up the screen from the beginning, and it slowly descends into these colors of orange and red. It's hell. It's hot. You open in the hottest of places possible, and you feel it. You feel the sweat in Max von Sydow's faces. Once again, these picaret sounds, these sweeping, tracking shots over the excavation site until this little boy finds our main priest, Marin, and he unveils the totem that is the statue of Pazuzu, the demon, that is going to, wreak havoc in Regan's life. And you see the hand, this hand of the priest's hand going into this hole, the sound of wind in there kind of distorted. You have this, what was it? There was another sound once he reveals the statue inside the stone, which is, I think it's a wasp's nest. It's something akin to that. Nature and the mystery of nature is always embedded in the soundscape of this film. When he unveils that statue of Pazuzu inside the stone, you hear that wasp's nest. It's kind of this distorted sound. Or later on, after the picarets come in different tonalities, he goes into the city. He talks a little bit with another expert, about good and evil. There seems to be something there, and there's this continuous sound external to him, but is really externalizing his internal kind of mental state, which is this kind of haunting, that he has of finding this hidden below the earth kind of magical entity, this demon, because all these sounds of the hammers in the streets from the blacksmiths, the woodsman, end up in that one pendulum in that office that then click stops. So there seems to be all of a sudden, without anybody saying anything, not even the main priest, he could have been saying some cliche line that could end up in a trailer like, "It's now, the evil is here." Whoa! And I'm glad that nothing of that happened. In an average movie, run-of-the-mill horror film of today, that thing would happen. He would say a dramatic line, but no, it's a pendulum. It's something has normal and banal, has a piece of furniture in a living room that tells you that the balance, the natural balance of the universe is off now. And it goes click and stops. and he goes back to the excavation site. He sees that big statue of the demon himself, which in itself is alluring to maturity and the changes that come into it by the big phallus that he has on the statue. And once again, the sound. So you have the wasp's nest, and then you have those rabid dogs fighting off in the desert, and then mixing with the statue itself and the sun behind it, casting a big shadow in von Sydow's face. The wind, the way it's framed, this big wide shot of the statue and Max von Sydow in that hill. It's so, he might fall from there. Something might happen, will there be death? It's very poignant. It's very powerful without very little being said throughout that opening scene. So, and he really connects that sense of the mythology of the film. It's suggestive. Nobody says anything, in the sense that why this demon? Why this demon? And why that girl on the other side of the world? It's scary precisely because on the other side of the world, North Iraq, you have this demon being risen from the earth. And for some reason, in America, this girl gets it. This girl gets the same demon. It's scary because of that, the idea that something so far away.
Just
shows her. What they say.
That's it. Yeah.
Why this girl? And then Max von Sydow says, I think it's to cause us despair. Exactly that. And I think that line is good to be in there, has a final kind of full stop to clear the ambiguity, but it's not super self-explanatory. It delivers to clear up the audience some kind of, final blow to the expectations, satisfying it to why the reason, if any reason, for this demon being attacking Reagan. But it doesn't go on into a full-on monologue or whatever, which would be the case.
It's not because when she was a child, she killed a squirrel that was actually possessed by, something stupid. It's just, I think that's the strength also of the film. It leaves enough that you can construct, there's a world outside of the film. It's not, of course, the film itself, you see a lot of things, but you can also imagine there's so much more. And then there's the sequels, but they build upon that, I'm sure, but you don't need them. I mean, other things maybe outside of the film that I find interesting is the religious reaction to it in the 70s specifically, because there was sort of a divide. Some people thought it was completely unacceptable and blasphemous, because it has a lot of blasphemous images, like the masturbation with the crucifix.
Let Jesus fuck you!
Let Jesus fuck you. But also, it's a film that, in terms of religious belief, it's a film that pretty much is siding with religious belief and saying this is true. Because again, because of Friedkin's style, it sort of treats it as a fact. And so a lot of religious people were also like, no, this is, it's saying that God exists because the devil exists, and the way to get rid of the devil is through the power of God. I don't know what they say about Father Karras committing suicide to fulfill that, but and it's even the end of the film is with his brother, I think, right, looking at the stairs.
I don't think it's his brother.
Who is he? He's just a guy.
He's just a friend. He's a friend.
I thought there was
a very
brother.
Interesting. He's Father Dreyer. That's the character's name, and he's a very interesting shot. Dyer.
Yeah. It's
I think of Dreyer, the director.
Yeah.
But I actually thought it was Dreyer because I thought it was kind of a nod to the other director for some reason, who also did a great horror called Vampire.
Yeah.
Or Vampire, but it is a very interesting shot by the end of the film with that father that can be missed, which is when, after Father Damien's death, he delivers the final confession to him, and in the very next day there's the wrapping of everything. Reagan and her mother change for another home, and then he confronts by himself the stairs that led to his colleague dying, and no sound exists. It all comes to a halt, and it's just him looking at those stairs, something who could normal, but exactly. In that film, in that moment, it's the weight is powerful. It seems like, wow, such an amazing shot, and the very window from which he fell behind in the background of this character. You feel the menace of it. You feel that evil still prevails, and there's a sort of despair or pessimism in that shot of the stairs, like this may happen again. There might be another little girl, little man, little boy who will be attacked. and without saying anything, which I think is very interesting.
Yeah, and I also think in that moment as well, especially in the final moments of the film, where the structure of the film with the pace of the the quiet followed by the intense and the vulgar, you suddenly it comes to a moment of rest. He's walking, he's talking, he's saying goodbye to the girl and to her mother. Then he goes to the stairs. Because of the pacing of the film, you almost feel like what is gonna happen? Something horrible must happen now, because that's just the logic of the film. But it doesn't. It just ends,
Yeah.
and that's it. It's the suggestion of the evil lurking around still, whatever place it chooses to go, because you don't know if the devil dies if you kill yourself when it possesses you. Like there's but
Yeah.
maybe it does. Who knows?
Yeah. And what do you think of this other character in this, assembly of characters who he feels almost a little bit displaced, but it's the character of the detective played by
Lee,
this
yeah.
very charming actor. I don't remember his
He's
name.
great.
He also appears in
Cobb.
Okay, yes, he appears in that Marlon Brando
12.
film, On the Waterfront. He's the villain.
Wow. I know him
And
from
he's very
12
good.
Angry Men.
Yes, as well, he is there, and he has a great power for anger. But in this film, he doesn't display it, and he's much more friendly. But he's kind of an oddball character, almost belonging in a comedy.
Yeah.
He kind of appears and pops in always with the same request: "Do you want to go to the Crest? I have 2 tickets to the movies." Like, what is this obsession with this
have
movie?
A showing
character?
of Othello. What does he say? I don't know. Groucho Marx as Othello, and someone else as I think Debbie Reynolds as Desdemona. I don't even know what the fuck he's talking about.
Always comes with another film suggestion. Always kind of an off-color request, like he's interrogating the mother, Chris, about her daughter and the murder of the director who kind of went out the window, and then it's like, I want an autograph from my little girl. Well, I have to say, it's not my little girl, it's me. I think, maybe he keeps things light. I think in a very bleak movie.
I don't know, yeah. I didn't...
And there's a grounded, an everyday man groundedness to him, perhaps.
Feels like, makes sense to have that. It's just a guy, Yeah,
it's just a guy.
He doesn't really... I don't know if he contributes to anything narratively that important, as far as I remember. He's kind of there as the
connective tissue, I think. In a way, he functions as well as a connective tissue between the mother and Father Damien when they are apart in their separate strands.
Exactly.
Because once he starts entering, he's kind of a point to the tension of the film. He's the audience, making questions and pulling them in to kind of bring them together in a sort of way. But yeah. Now, just coming back around to another scene that I really enjoyed in the film, within that theme of maturity and the symbolism in the film towards that idea, is how you have the party, and then how the supernatural starts happening. This phenomena, right? You have Reagan. First of all, we have this shot of Ellen by the piano with all her friends singing "Sweet Home," which is kind of very ironic, "Sweet Home," the lovable child, prepubescent, all of that, those things. No worries, no tension between mother and daughter as of yet. They all agree with it, with everything. It's so kind of that idyllic place in the family. And then all of a sudden, what can wreak havoc in a party, but a teenager appearing with a rant, a fit, but in the word creating an embarrassing moment by peeing, the floor all over. And the camera already lets you know that, because the camera, kind of tracks the piano. They start singing, tracks away from the piano, and you see, okay, now it's going to happen something. Now it's going to be the hit. And surely enough, Reagan comes in and says the line, you will die one day, or you will die tomorrow, or something like that. And the pee, but it's all very natural. There's no kind of, the piano does not set fire to itself. It's just her peeing. And then progressively, these phenomena, these apparitions, these supernatural events start getting pushed further and further beyond that realm of realism into the magical grounds, like her going down the stairs in a spider-like way, blood pouring down, and then in the way that it's filmed. I think that where I really like the film is that not only in the way that it's filmed, but in the narrative, is that what I'm most interested in the film is the build-up, is this is this languid construction of the various strands and how to express these ideas of how science maybe not able to save you. What is the maturity in this film? These fears regarding maturity and womanhood, and what is, this social class, how the social class, the idea of money can play into it. Some people cannot even have medical assistance, some can. 18 doctors, no one can help me, and then the frustration that comes from that, not being able to help a loved one. And then visually, this restraint that he has, right, throughout most of the film. So then when the exorcism happens, I think that's the thing I'm least interested in throughout the whole film. Like, it's beautifully executed, of course.
Yeah.
Not saying anything otherwise. It's a great sequence, and it's also when a sequence. I think the first moment where what I'm trying to say is that it's the first sequence where you start having more expressionistic camera movements with these kind of very dramatic shadows and low-key lighting with low angle kind of sharpening the shadows from below, and kind of low angles of the camera revealing the whole size and dimension of the room as well. And that really happens very early on, just before the exorcism scene, with the psychiatrist coming into play. And psychiatry seems to be something that is almost put to a side in a discrediting way, I think, from the doctors who deal with other areas of medicine. It's always like, I wouldn't go so far as to psychiatry. It's not complex. Let's keep it simple. It's always, to that degree, it seems that psychiatry somehow, I don't know if Friedkin is commenting at any level of discredit for psychiatry, even then in the 70s, but you feel that kind of sort of, those guys from psychiatry, let's not go there.
Those weirdos.
And those weirdos. But when a psychiatrist comes into play, he's kind of the key into revealing that, showing to the doctor, showing to the mother, actually there's something happening here, because he's the one who does the hypnosis in the room. And the hypnosis is the thing that reveals the demon inside her. Very clearly states, this is Reagan, and this is the demon inside her. They both are people or entities, different entities, and who, for the first time in the film, very clearly state that we're dealing with something out of our hands here, of another world. So the psychiatry ended up being kind of a more important role that I would ever. I didn't think that she would ever go down that route, but they really go everywhere in terms of as far as medicine can go, just before to go into exorcism. That's all for today, folks. If you'd like to reach out and suggest a film for the next episode, you can find us on the podcast official Instagram and Facebook pages. Feel free to subscribe, share this episode, or simply give us a like. That's how our podcast can grow ever more groovy. And if you are on YouTube and want to see more videos like this, check out this next video right here. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Happy exorcisms.
Happy exorcisms.